I'm Charlie Wright of Gold Derby, and today I am speaking with Josh Cooley, the director of Transformers One, as part of our Meet the Experts film animation panel. The first thing I got to ask you is, Transformers is such a well-established property and means a lot for so many people. And I'm curious, did you have a fondness for the original Transformers cartoons?
I did. I grew up in the 80s and I loved Saturday morning so much. I think it's the combination of not going to school and eating cereal and then watching cartoons. And I watched the original Transformers and G.I. Joe, all that fun stuff. So I grew up on that.
I'm curious. Did you also were you like me, and did you know that your Saturday morning cartoons were over when Soul Train came on?
I don't remember Soul Train. I don't remember Soul Train coming
That's
in.
just the one I remember.
I would remember that, I think.
Um, what made you want to dive into the origins of Megatron and Optimus Prime, and how did you end up settling on what their origin story would be?
Well, the when I got the script, I saw that it was this idea of going from friends and basically brothers to enemies, and I loved the idea of seeing that on screen. It was something we'd never seen. There's been like 9 Transformers films, and that's never been talked about. And that is part of the original lore of Transformers, which is it's like a very vast, like Tolkien length, of lore for Transformers. So I loved the idea of doing that because it meant that if we get them on the same page at the beginning and the audience really likes them as friends and brothers at the beginning, then by the end of the film, it'd actually be really tragic when it falls apart. And so I thought that's super emotional, and I would love to put real human emotion into these characters.
So I think one of the other things I think is so striking about this is the world, the way that the world of Autobots, I guess, is the right term for that. I can never remember.
Cybertron. Yeah, the world of Cybertron.
Yeah, all of the way that whole world looks is just absolutely incredible, and I'm wondering what went into creating the design for the world that the Transformers live in.
Yeah, so the whole movie being on their planet, which is made of metal, that right away was really intriguing. I thought that could be something that not only would animation take advantage of, but also just CG. We could do reflections extremely well, and so that would be really cool. But I didn't want it to look just like a big silver ball in the sky, but or gray. So my production designer Jason Shire and he collected a bunch of metals on that we have here on Earth, and just to see what they actually look like, and they're extremely colorful and reflective and beautiful. And so we thought, like, can we make a planet out of metal that looks beautiful? Because if story wise, this planet is not dying yet. Everything's going pretty great, and so and that's what's at stake for these characters, their home world. And so that was the goal. I want to make a metal planet that transforms on its own and is just stunning color wise and lighting. And I'm really happy with what we turned out with.
I think one of the other things that is so great about this is the level of talent that you have in the voice acting
Mm.
for this film. And I was curious, what was the casting process like that led you to determine that Chris Hemsworth and Brian Tyree Henry were the right people to voice Optimus Prime and Megatron, respectively?
Yeah, that was the thing that kind of made me freak me out at first on this project, was how do we cast Optimus and Megatron, because we're doing a younger version of them, and knowing that they're basically kind of different characters. Orion Pax and D16 are their names before they come Optimus and Megatron. That helped me think about how to approach this. And so I didn't want to stray away from that. I still wanted to honor where, that they're eventually going that direction. And Chris, his just the depth of his voice, he has a natural, really deep voice, which felt correct. And then on top of that, he has just natural charm that comes through his acting, through his everything. And I like that a lot for Orion Pax, just to have this a little bit more carefree, not as refined yet, and he's not a leader yet, so he has a lot to learn. And Chris totally got that, and I thought nailed it. And with D16, same kind of thing. I needed the audience to fall in love with these two characters as friends. And that meant not having somebody who's acting like a villain right away. He needs to be a friendly guy. Same kind of thing, has oodles of charm as well. So, and Brian, I knew that he could do that arc. I knew that he could go from super likable to somebody who's a villainous, but at the same time, we understand why they are the way they are acting. And so I worked with both of them just on those two arcs, and I still can't believe the cast we got for this film. Every single one of the actors is just phenomenal.
I will say what was very funny when I saw the movie, and when I first heard Optimus speak, I thought it was John Hamm. Honestly, I was like, that sounds like John Hamm, and then a bit later I'm like, no, that's John Hamm.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, John brought so much to Sentinel. Just that type of character. No spoilers, but like you get him right away, and but he's so entertaining throughout the entire film. Every single line, I just get excited every time I see Sentinel come on screen.
No question about that. I know that this film, that you did a lot of work on this film at ILM, Industrial Light and Magic, and I know that for a lot of people in the industry, that location has a very deep meaning
Mhm.
for a lot of people. And I was wondering, what was it like for you, and what did it mean to work on this film at ILM?
Yeah, I mean, Star Wars was a massive influence on me growing up, and even on this film, there's a lot of, just in terms of scale and being a sci-fi film. Um, I've always loved ILM. I've been obsessed with it, from Star Wars, but also just like the making of books I had as a kid. And so it was a real treat to work with them, work alongside them. They are so talented, obviously, but also they are all storytellers, and they grew up with Transformers as well. So there was there was so much love put into the film, just on every single level of it. And we even had animators that were almost fighting each other for shots, because they were like, I grew up with Starscream and he's my favorite character, so I need to do this shot. And so it was so much fun. It really felt like we were playing. It just felt like, it didn't feel like work, it felt like play. And I think that comes across when you watch the film, because it's just, there's so much, so much just joy. I don't even know how else to put it. We just had so much fun making it.
We are an awards site, and you have had quite an interesting experience with awards. You are an Oscar winner for Toy Story 4,
Mhm.
which must have been a crazy time, because within 2 months after that happened, the world shut down.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, what was that experience like for you? What was that like for you?
It was amazing. You know, just to be just to be on the nominated, you get to do so much and meet so many people, and just other people within the industry that you admire, and or you've never met before. So I've made a lot of friends just through that process of being on the awards circuit, which is just really cool. And then it was fortunate enough to be nominated and fortunate enough to win, and it was a shock. I did not. It was not like, oh, well, this is a shoe in. It's like I was really shocked. And I remember, when they said the name, and I went to stand up, and I immediately stuck my hands in my pockets, because I thought my pants were falling down, because it just, everything went numb. And so, you get up on stage and you're saying thank you, but you're looking like right at, Tom Hanks. I'm like, oh, I recognize him. In my brain, I'm thinking this. But then there's De Niro, and like, it was an amazing, it's so surreal. And then there's a definitely a, kind of this whole like gauntlet afterwards, once you go backstage, that you go through, and they're kind of whisking you around. Everybody's going, congratulations, and you're holding this thing that's like 1,000,000 pounds, and you're like, thank you. And then all of a sudden, like, Brad Pitt's in front of you, and he's like, he had just won right before us, and so he's like, congratulations, man. Like, we're like, clinking Oscars. It's like, what is going on right now? So it was super surreal, but an
Well,
honor.
Josh, thank you so much for joining us. We wish you all the best, and we look forward to seeing you on our roundtable in just a little bit.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
I'm Charlie Wright of Gold Derby, and today I'm speaking with Chris Sanders, the director of the film The Wild Robot, as part of our Meet the Experts film animation panel. I'm just going to be very blunt with my first question. Did you mean to have me crying like it was ugly crying by the end of that movie? Is that your goal for everybody?
I think it was very much our goal to, I think, be first and foremost be true to Peter's book. But we were feeling all those things as we were making this film. So to find out that other people were reacting the same way that we did was was really gratifying.
Um, uh, I'm, I think one of the central things about the movie is the look and design of Roz the robot is so compelling, and it just feels right on so many levels. And I'm wondering what went into getting the look and design of Roz.
We, in the translation from the robot as depicted in Peter Brown's novel, we were looking for something that was going to be memorable and was going to be classic. If in success, that it would be something that would endure as far as the design, and that meant we had to find something that had some level of simplicity and and charm, really. But also it had to be a little bit different in the Venn diagram of robots. You're always going to have some territory that you're like, veering into that somebody else is in there as well. And we were all trying our hand at it, including myself. And it was our one of our artists, Hyun Ha, who came in with the design that you saw. He was able to find a visual, I think, rhythm with all those spheres. So it was a theme and variation that he came up with, and his spheres were so friendly, and that's exactly how we want to feel to people to feel about Roz. I always looked at Roz as though she was a real thing that a real person could order in the future. I'd always like I wanted this robot to feel like, you could replace a part on her if you had to, that she was user friendly, and that the things that she did and the things that you saw on her just made sense.
Um, so I know this was taken from a book, like you said. What was the author's name again? Peter Brown.
Peter Brown.
Peter
Yeah.
Brown. And were there any other inspirations that you looked to for the story or for the design of the movie?
Well, absolutely. In the environments in the world, there were two artists that we were focused on as far as an aspirational aspect of this whole thing. First and foremost, Miyazaki's forests, particularly for me, the ones that I saw when I watched My Neighbor Totoro. Those really, stuck with me. I'd never seen a forest that was that completely immersive, and had such a beautiful style to it. But also Tyrus Wong's soft oil painted textures and style that he brought to Bambi. And Bambi again is also, I think, one of the greatest animated forests, illustrated forests I'd ever seen. So aspirationally, those were the vibes that we were those were the styles I think were our North Star. That would be probably the best way to say it.
And it's interesting you brought up specifically Miyazaki's My Neighbor Totoro. I talked last year with Toshio Suzuki, who heads Studio Ghibli, and when I asked him what's his favorite one, he actually said, "I usually don't say, but it is My Neighbor Totoro." uh,
That's really exciting. When I visited their studio, the one and only time I ever visited, I was standing in his parking spot when he pulled in. And that's how I met him. I was waiting to go in and there was nobody parked there and I was just standing right in his parking spot. And that's how I met him. He was so kind and so nice.
I think one of the things like what I love about a movie like The Wild Robot is it hits where it hits notes that work, for younger viewers, but then there are other notes that hit that definitely work more for,
Mm.
older viewers, people in their old age in their late 30s like myself. Um, how do you find the balance between making sure your film has those appeals to both young people as well as adults?
There's two things going on. First and foremost, whenever we work on an animated film, no matter what it is, we never try to target anyone. I always, I strive and work to just never exclude anyone. I never target anyone at the same time on the other end of that whole scale. I think if you're targeting a particular group, you're going to probably inevitably miss. I think you just want to be all inclusive. But in the case of the Wild Robot, I was particularly concerned that it would have a level of sophistication so that grown-up people like me, people who weren't kids, anybody who was above the age of like 25, would see it in a certain way. Because I knew that there were so many appealing things that kids were automatically going to be drawn to, not the least of which is that it's a book that is widely read amongst school children of a certain grade level. So I felt like all those things were very kid friendly. But I thought or should I say, I felt that we owed Peter's book and we owed the story that kind of resonant sophistication so that it feel just the right way. And I think we achieved it. That's the whole drive behind that unique style that was created really just for that particular project.
Uh, so one of the other things I think makes the movie work so well is, of course, the voice of Roz, and I'm curious as to what was the process like that ended with Lupita Nyong'o being the voice of Roz.
Our casting director, Christy Soper, suggested Lupita as the voice of Roz. She was the number one person on our list, and we were very fortunate that she said yes. And that was just the beginning of the process. Roz is an incredibly subtle character. She's very specific, but very elusive in a lot of ways. And for me, it was a journey, an absolutely fascinating journey, working with Lupita every single time we got together to record. And even beforehand, we had several conversations before we even got into a recording studio, just as to what the architecture of Roz's mind would be like. Because Roz was, she's a programmed being that is going to begin to change. And so Lupita it was fascinating for me to watch Lupita like deconstruct Roz and then put her back together again, if you will, and just so that she could understand the architecture of her thinking. And then Lupita went even beyond that. She actually created a voice. So the voice that you hear coming from Roz has a three-step development. There's the phase one voice where she's fresh out of the box. And that was the one that was, I think, the hardest on Lupita vocally. And she created that sound. And we termed it a kind of a relentless optimism. The kind of thing you hear from Siri or from Alexa when you say hello to them, they're like, "Hello, can I help you?" And they're very energetic and very can-do and very positive. So it's that sort of positivity that Lupita captured. But as the film goes on and the story develops, she certainly becomes a more dimensional being and much more human, if you will, and much more just actual like Lupita. So as we record, and as you know, we do things completely out of order, depending on what the needs of the story are at that particular time in the process. And even within a recording session, we'll move around so as to not stress Lupita's voice more than it needs to. So we would always have to be very clear, is this a phase 3, phase 2, or phase 1 voice as we jumped into each of those bits as we recorded?
Were any of the other voices difficult to cast to find the right find the right fit for, be it Pedro Pascal or Kit Connor or Matt Berry or any of those people?
We were so fortunate that our very first choices for every character, they all said yes. And I think Christy Soper's the art of the casting that she produced was magnificent. Just so as we recorded each of these characters, they customize their own character. I write a character as closely to what I think it should be as possible, but once it's cast, I immediately go in and I try to predictively um, change it so that it'll be a better fit for that particular actor. But then inevitably, when we come in and we actually get there with the mic, there's more customization and more development. And that's where I have to say I was especially impressed with Christie's choices because the the how incredibly well suited and what a good fit each of these actors were to their particular character became more and more evident the more I worked with each of them.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for joining us. We wish you all the best over the next couple of months, and we look forward to seeing you on our panel in just a little bit.
Ah, thank you so much.
I'm Charlie Bright of Gold Derby, and today I'm speaking with Peter Browngardt, the director of the film The Day the Earth Blew Up, a Looney Tunes movie, as part of our Meet the Experts film animation panel. First thing I want to ask you is, working with the Looney Tunes characters is, incredible. They're so well established for so many people. Is it tough making a movie with characters that are already so well established in people's minds?
Yeah, especially with taking those characters and putting them into a larger story, a 90-minute story, where it's just not jokes the whole time. You had to sort of add some emotional story to Porky and Daffy, the stars of our film, so an audience can invest in it for that amount of time. So you're trying to honor their personalities and who these characters are from the past, but also trying to expand them so they can sort of hold up the storytelling of 90 minutes.
So I'm curious. I'm sure this is a pretty simple question for you, but what have the Looney Tunes cartoons meant to you over the years, and what were some of your favorites growing up?
Well, they meant a lot. They sort of formed me as an entertainer and an animation artist. They are the greatest animated comedy shorts ever made. Maybe Tex Avery, MGM are up there too, but he helped create the Looney Tunes, so I've sort of put them kind of in a grouping together. Some of my favorites. There's something special about all of them in a weird way. There's over 1,000 of the classic shorts, but some of my favorites would be probably Buccaneer Bugs is a Frizz Feeling cartoon. I love that cartoon. I love a lot of the early Clampets. I love Piggy Bank Robbery. I love Falling Hair, which is a war cartoon that Clampett did with the Gremlin, Bugs Bunny versus the Gremlin. But yeah, it's a tough one. I love Duck Dodgers. Yeah, so there's so many to love.
So I'm curious as to what made you want to tell a buddy story with Daffy Duck and Porky Pig, because at least from what I remember, those were two characters that you didn't really see together that often, or maybe I'm not remembering the right ones. And if so, please, and if I'm getting that wrong, please correct me on that. But what made you want to tell a buddy story with those two characters?
Well, they did start off as a buddy. I mean, Porky was invented first or created first, but then they were in the 30s black and white shorts, a lot done by a lot by Clampett and other directors. They were sort of teamed up. They lived together, so that's one reason. But also, they still continue to be a buddy in a lot of the Chuck Jones, like Duck Dodgers, The Deuce You Say, Rocket Squad, and one of the main reasons why we pick them, because I'm sure the studio definitely would prefer a Bugs Bunny feature or a Tweety Bird or a Taz because they sell more merchandise, but is because they are they're non-adversarial, some of the only, if not the only, actually there's a few others, but non-adversarial characters. They don't want to kill each other. They don't want to blow each other's brains out or eat each other. So it makes it a little bit easier to tell this larger story with it. And also they've been, like I mentioned before, they were in a lot of genre cartoons like Duck Dodgers and The Deuce You Say and stuff, which is nice to sort of team it in, put it into a sort of a B movie genre, which the movie is, sci-fi.
I'm curious as to with the person who did, because I can't remember his name, but the person who does the voice of both Daffy and Porky. What was his name again?
It's Eric Bauza.
Eric, he'd been doing those voices for a while now, correct? And did that just?
Well, I casted him first for Bugs and Daffy and some others. He was playing Marvin the Martian prior to that, and a few other Looney Tunes characters. But the sort of big stars were cast, where other actors were playing them. But yeah, we just did an open call, and the only person who really owns the voice of those characters is Mel Blanc, who's no longer with us. So finding the sort of right one for my taste level of what I like in the sound of the characters is sort of what we went after.
What are some of those things that you were looking for in there that you were trying to hear for with the when auditioning those voices?
Someone who just doesn't do an impersonation of it, but can actually act in the voice, and someone who has the vocal range to go out of the voice, like Mel Blanc did for comedy reasons. That's sort of the big things.
One of the other fun voices you have in here is the great Peter McNichol, because I firmly believe that no one has a demented yell like Peter McNichol. I think he has a voice, he has a category all his own on there. And I'm curious, what was it like working with Peter McNichol and getting that kind of performance out of him?
It was really fun. He's an amazing character actor, performer. He's actually an animation fan too. He's an animation art collector. We found out while we were working with him, which was really cool. So he sort of got the medium, or got the what to do, how to sort of rise, bring your performance up to animation kind of performing, for at least especially for Looney Tunes. But yeah, he was great. I the way we do it is we write the movie. Well, there was a script for the movie, but so much of the movie is written in the storyboard stage of the process, get rewritten and rewritten and rewritten. So I pitched the boards to the actors before they perform, and so it was fun to sort of. So he had a visuals of like some visual cues of how to take the performance, and then sometimes he would just go off and do his thing, and we found wonderful things in those takes as well.
What was it like introducing a love interest for Porky with Petunia? What was that like writing that storyline?
It was fun. She was a fun character sort of to evolve or not reinvent, but sort of do our take with. There's definitely, there's old cartoons or classic Looney Tunes shorts where they have a relationship and there's a romance there. So we sort of went off of that. Yeah, it was fun to sort of see that through the movie and see how her involvement with the duo of Porky and Daffy sort of helped them learn something about themselves and each other and solve sort of the problem of the problems in the film.
I think one of the other really distinctive things about the film is, or at least when I was watching the film and I saw there were 11 credited writers on there. I'm just curious as to, could you describe how that worked? Because I'm pretty sure, I'm guessing you all just weren't, all 11 of you were not in a room at the same time the whole time, just doing everything there. I was just curious if you could describe how there were 11 and how that exactly worked in terms of producing the screenplay.
Yeah, so there's only one writer wrote a screenplay. So there's only one writer, that was Kevin Costello, wrote a screenplay, and that was sort of a very basic blueprint of what the film is. And storyboard artists are writers. In animation, that's what we do. We write and we draw. We write the dialogue, we write the jokes. And it was very important to me, and I fought very hard against the studio who usually don't want to credit storyboard artists as writers on films for a lot of different reasons. And I was very grateful that they, because I did that on all my projects. I fight for the storyboard artists to get writing credit on it because they are writing. Picture speaks 1,000 words, but not only that, we do write words. We write the dialogue, we rewrite it, we rewrite it. And animated movie is never made in a script. You compare a script to what the animated film is. Pick anyone. Maybe even Iron Giant, which Brad Bird wrote himself, right? Even if it is somewhat a writer-director kind of situation, it evolves so much and gets rewritten so much. So it's very important to me. Steve Hillenburg did it for the SpongeBob movie and won that against the studio, one that had that win against Paramount to get credit for his storyboard artists to writers. But that's what it is. All of them, and we were all in a room. We did the movie over the pandemic. So we were on a room like this. We were in a Zoom room, and we wrote, and we would sometimes pair off and divide up, but everybody was always on these story calls, and we would discuss the film and talk through each moment. Yeah, so that's why there's so many writers, because there was.
Peter, thank you so much for joining us. We wish you all the best over the next couple of months, and we look forward to seeing you in our panel in just a little bit.
Great. Thanks so much.
Hi, everyone. I'm Charlie Bright with Gold Derby, and today I am very pleased to be speaking with several people with animated films in this year's Derby as part of our Meet the Experts film animation panel. We are joined by Josh Cooley, the director of Transformers One, Chris Sanders, the director of The Wild Robot, and Peter Browngardt, the director of The Day the Earth Blew Up, a Looney Tunes movie. The first question I want to ask you guys is I'm always curious as to, with people that work in animation, what is the piece of animation that you saw that made you go, that's what I want to do. I want to be a part of that. And let me start with you, Josh, on that.
Well, I grew up watching all Saturday morning cartoons, and I was obsessed with Looney Tunes, but it wasn't until I saw Who Framed Roger Rabbit was the movie that made me go, I have to do whatever is happening right there.
That was the one for you?
Yep. Yeah, that was the one.
What about you, Chris?
There was the first one that I really remember that had a lasting, a permanent effect on me was when I was a kid and I was watching A Charlie Brown Christmas. And it was the first time I had ever become that emotional, I think, watching anything. But years later, I would say I was watching, there's a movie that Disney made called Saludos Amigos, I believe. And within it, there is a 3 or 2 minute sequence called The Three Caballeros. And it was a sequence done, I think, entirely by Ward Kimball, solo. And that was the first time for me. It was the most like pure animation, high energy, like imagination in the most unlimited, free, sort of flowing kind of way. And I thought I would like to do that.
I actually had that on Laserdisc, on an old Japanese thing. So I actually had to make sure you had the right audio track on it. And I used to wear that one out. That was one I was obsessed with when I was a little kid. Yep.
Yeah, I can watch that particular sequence on repeat. Yeah.
And what about you, Peter?
Probably Who Framed Roger Rabbit as well, but more so than that, Tex Avery's Screwball Classics Volume 2 VHS was sort of the thing that I'd never seen anything so funny in my life, and I just watched on repeat over and over again, and sort of turned me on to not only classic Looney Tunes, but all that sort of older animation stuff from when I was a kid. And I went and rented a lot of videos, Fleischer Popeye cartoons, and that. So yeah, probably those combination of those two things.
And sort of building off of that, what got you into animation? I'm curious as to what was your first job working in animation that got you started within this part of the industry. And I'll start with you, Peter.
Oh, I was a second year student at Cal Arts, and I got a job over my summer on Futurama, on the first season of Futurama. So I was a character layout artist. So I did layout on Futurama, and then
very nice. It's one of my all-time favorite shows, and I have that season on DVD. What about you, Chris?
My first job was Marvel Productions on the Muppet Babies, doing models. Disney, when I graduated Cal Arts, Disney was not in a period where they were really hiring anybody. And the only really place that was available was Marvel. And in Cal Arts, I had always been urged to draw everything you see, chairs, tables, draw everything. And I just didn't really do that. It didn't really capture my imagination. But my first job at Marvel was drawing chairs and tables and lamps and all the stuff that had to appear on screen. So I I got my my dose of just drawing everything.
Do you feel like you had like the spirit of the person that would tell you that on your side, saying, "See, I told you this is what you have to do"?
Yep. Yeah, I always thought about that. Yeah.
And what about you, Josh?
Well, my first job, see, I graduated art school in San Francisco and was going to be a 2D animator. And then right as I was graduating is when all the 2D houses were closing up. And so I thought about going into story, and I was lucky that I met Joe Ramft right after I graduated, and uh, it was like one of those like crazy through the back door kind of things where he called me and said, "Hey, I saw your stuff. Would you be interested in being an intern at Pixar?" And so the first thing I worked on was Cars, and then first of all I said yes, absolutely, and then I worked on Cars and The Incredibles and Ratatouille, and turns out I was the first story intern at Pixar. So I was able to just kind of bounce between those three movies and learn so much just in that short amount of time. And then I was like, I don't want to leave this place. So I stayed for 18 years. Not as an intern, eventually, moved on, but
Well, hopefully, yeah.
18 years as an intern.
That actually sounds like it would actually probably make a great animated movie. The 18-year intern.
Oh my God.
I love also hearing from people that work in animation what they personally have been enjoying within the medium. Didn't say in the genre, in the medium. And I was curious, what was the last animated thing you saw that really blew you away? And Chris, I want to start with you on that one.
Arcane, for sure. I binged it. I waited until I had enough time to really just dive in, and because I had a feeling I was going to be like really like sucked into the whole thing, and I was. I think that certainly that was, I think, continuing the journey of artistic expression that we've now been able to achieve in animation, the thing that started with in the Spider-Verse. Beyond the Spider-Verse, like amazing. That was just such a call to action. That was such a wake-up call for all of us. But yeah, Arcane would be the one that I binged.
Did
That
you
was
see
really
the trailer for the season 2 that just dropped?
Yes, and I'm yes, I'm really anxious to jump into it. And once again, I'm going to wait until I'm in a situation where I can like engage with it and not have to disengage.
That's right. Tell everybody, don't bother me. I'm in my zone right now.
Yeah.
What about you, Peter?
A few months ago, a friend directed and animated a music video for Less Savvy Fav, a punk band out of New York, I think. And it was really cool because he only had a very low budget and not a lot of time to do it. But the way he told the story from the song really blew me away, and how he used like so many different styles and mediums in to create the video, using all forms of animation and technique. Really was a really refresher of what you can do with the medium, and sort of putting all these sort of ideas together. He did stuff like more traditional hand-drawn stuff, but then he also did like sort of projection on walls with stop motion and live actions sort of happening over top of it, with animation, like layering animation on top of things. It just was like brought me back to sort of the basics of like what you can do with the medium, and how you can combine so many things together with it. But yeah, it was really, I watched it several times because I just was really taken aback of how it hit me. So it was really cool.
What about you, Josh?
I have a very similar answer. Well, first of all, Spider-Verse was massive, obviously, and that kind of blew my mind. But the similar to Peter, like a buddy of mine, Arthur, created Swaybox Studios, and they have a test that's going around online now, where they're using animatronics and 3D and stop motion all at the same time, and just based on whatever shot you need, they just have this, they change up the medium, which is really amazing. And they did a test where they took Hogarth from the Iron Giant and kind of mimicked exactly, the poses, but it's a 3D puppet using animatronics, and it's insane. It is really, really good. And it blows my mind every time I see it.
Sort of staying on this thing. I think because like I said earlier, I did, and we've all been calling it a medium. It's not a genre because there's so many different things that you can do with animation. It's not limited to one genre. And I've always been curious, like, is there a kind of story that you haven't seen told through animation that you would like to see told through the medium of animation? And I want to start with you, Josh, on that.
Yeah, not that I'm a huge fan of this medium or not, of this genre, but I would love to see an animated horror movie. I don't think I've seen one that grasps me as hard as like, Alien or anything like that. I feel like there's something we can do something more just to you know, something a little more adult. It's really terrifying.
And you could really go into some really fun areas in terms of like truly horrifying things to look at through animation.
Yeah, I mean, there has been, I think that's what made me think of that is because you see something like, there's moments in Love, Death, and Robots, which are like really like, oh my God. And so, but that's just a short. I'd love to see like a full story that really, uses the medium to its advantage.
What about you, Peter?
I'd have to agree with that. Horror, like sort of, especially if you go really sort of gore or sort of hard horror, and it would be really cool. I'm a big fan of that media, that genre, and yeah, and also like there has been some attempts at doing some noir stuff, but you know, like a real like cool murder mystery kind of heavy noir adult thing would be really cool. There's always sort of shades of that and stuff, but not like a full on stab in that, like a Chinatown or a Shadow of a Doubt or something like that.
How about you, Chris?
I was going to say horror, and I think that would be an incredibly difficult thing to pull off, but it absolutely possible. And animation would be able to do things that you couldn't do in any other place. I would say though, something that would verge on, it's going to be a strange, something that would verge on documentary in a way. I think that something that was a lot more serious, just because art is so good at doing this kind of thing, focusing you and creating a mood. So I think something that would be almost biographical slash documentary, to just locate and like take a moment in time, a moment in history, and like and bring that to the screen, but in animation. Yeah.
A couple of years ago, did you see Flea? It was an animated documentary about a guy's life. I think he was coming from Afghanistan. It was Denmark's official entry for the foreign language for the international feature. It's an animated documentary.
I don't think I did see that. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that sounds like fascinating. I'll have to do that.
It's very good. I can't recommend it enough. And there are also, and I'm not trying but there have been some that and along with other ones like Waltz with Bashir and Persepolis were some of my other favorite ones as well. Um, uh, what I'm really curious, one of the things I'd like to have fun with here is I like to take a bit of a hypothetical here. For one of you, this may be a bit more this may have a bit more be a bit more grounded for you, but we are an award site, and I'm always curious, what would you if you could pick any piece of music to play as if you were to win something and as you made your way up to the stage, what would that music be? And I'm just curious what that would be for you. And let me start with you, Chris.
As I'm racking my brain, going through my Rolodex. I mean, I would have to just Chris Bauer's music that he just did, I think has been on my mind quite a lot for obvious reasons. I think probably the cut from it was as the shot as she goes up to as Roz goes to the top of the mountain to ultimately set off her activate her signal. There was just something about that particular moment that it just had such presence to it.
And what about you, Peter?
Maybe Werewolves of London by Warren Zevon.
Very nice. And what about and how about you, Josh? I know this is a bit it's a bit of treaded ground for you.
Uh, I don't remember. I don't remember what was playing, but I would say I'm going to give you a joke answer, which is pomp and circumstance, the same way that like Macho Man Randy Savage would enter the ring in the 80s.
Would he use that?
Yeah,
No way.
yeah, it was great. It's whereas every other wrestler would do some rock song or something, he'd do pomp and circumstance, which is so damn funny.
Oh man, I treasure that. Um, yeah, I think one of the other things with uh these I'm curious when it comes to stuff that you've done, what's some of the most uh what's what I'm looking for? A response you've received to a project of yours that really just moved you and really like got you of all of any projects that you've done. And because I know that for animation, it can be so personal for so many people. It can get people on such a visceral level. And I'm curious as to what you've gotten about that. And I want to start with you, Peter, on that.
I think we were at Annecy, and when I did the Looney Tunes shorts for Max or HBO Max, we screened an animatic, and it was such a scary idea to sort of do new Looney Tunes shorts for myself, and I think a lot of other people that we sort of put together to make them. That when the audience reaction was so positive and it went over so well that it was like really uplifting for myself, and just to see something that we worked so hard on. Maybe it was just in animatic form, but it translated so well and got such big laughs that it was like really inspiring to move forward and then we did over 200 more shorts. So it was like a real big sort of jolt of energy and inspiration to keep going, and that we could possibly, sort of hold the torch of Looney Tunes a little further, out there. So.
And Josh?
Well, I've had interesting experience on Transformers recently, just because people are everybody, it's 40 years old, so most people have grown up with it, or that are fans of it. So there's been some real tears, I've had, which is really nice, from people that are just hardcore fans. But I will say, like, one of the things I never expected, I worked on the first Inside Out, and I was a writer on that, and I had this woman come up to me and tell me that she was using our movie as a way for kids to be able to, she was a child psychiatrist, and was like, it was a way for kids to express how they're feeling, was using the movie, which that's something that's just like, wow, I never would have expected that. And still kind of surreal to think about.
And what about you, Chris?
Certainly there was a moment at Annecy that I experienced that I will, never forget, just being up on stage for the very first time and showing the pieces of the Wild Robot. But I think my actual answer would be, oddly enough, it was during a test screening with our first just what do you call it, when you gather an audience,
Audience preview.
Recruited, with our first recruited, like, real audience for How to Train Your Dragon, and we were presenting a piece of the story where Hiccup loses his foot at the end of the movie, and I think we were all feeling very nervous about that. And as you know, you're not allowed to talk. You sit in the back of the room and you let everybody else do the talking. And so at that moment, your destiny is in the hands of strangers, and it's very suspenseful. And the thing I will never forget is that the very first question our focus group was asked, is there anything you want to just say about this film off the top of your head? And a lot of hands went up, and a little boy, the very first thing he said was, when Hiccup lost his foot, he gained so much more. Please don't change that. And then the very next person said the very same thing in different words. They said yes, and the entire audience, one by one, was coming to the defense of what they were perceiving to be one of the more I think, vulnerable parts of the movie, and they came to our rescue. Not that we needed rescue, but they didn't know, but they all came in there and they supported and reinforced. Please do not change that. Whatever you do, leave that as it is. And it was an extraordinary moment I'll never forget.
Well, Josh, Peter, and Chris, thank you so much for joining us. We wish you all the best over the next couple of months. And to all of our viewers, please keep coming to Gold Derby to make your predictions in advance of the Oscar nominations coming out next year. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.